Well, it looks like demanding reparations isn't all that's cracked up to be. And I have an article about this at Yahoo News. It's something that isn't getting a lot of play, so I thought I'd cover it. And it's about what's going on in Detroit. So in Detroit, they've set up this reparations task force. But they're finally being smacked with reality because they have a limited budget. They're going to have to bring somebody in from the outside to look at all these social and economic factors. And despite the passing of a successful ballot initiative to get the ball rolling with this task force, they've had low turnout in the black community for these meetings, maybe about a dozen or so people. Now, in a related story, and this is just gravy, just to prove a point here, that handing out money or taking down statues or flags, renaming an army base, in this case in Virginia, is not going to erase what happened in history. It's not going to change a damn thing. So last Thursday in Virginia, and this is also at Yahoo, you can probably find clips of it here on YouTube, they held this ceremony to rename the army base that was named after Robert E. Lee. But there's a problem. They chose the names Gregg and Adams in honor of two great black Army officers. But one of the names, Gregg, G-R-E-G-G, happens to be the name of a former plantation in South Carolina. I have it right here. There's a website you can go to called South Carolina Plantations. And one of the plantations is named Gregg. It's currently where Marion Francis College is. And the administrative building is what was once the old plantation house. So they might have to go back and rename this army base after renaming it as not to conjure up images of slavery, plantation life, Jim Crow, just to show you how stupid this all is. So getting to this article at Yahoo about Detroit, story by Dana Athena, this came out last Wednesday, Detroit Free Press. Detroit's reparations task force is in the early stages, but members of the new commission grappling with how to make amends for longstanding systemic racism in the U.S. are preparing what new housing and economic development opportunities may look like for Detroiters. Now, they interviewed two people here. Detroit's task force co-chairs, Lauren Hood and Keith Williams, said the city's challenges are different from others. That includes places like San Francisco, where a similar committee this year proposed a $5 million in cash payout to citizens as one of many recommendations. And they go on to talk about this. Quote, on the surface, it looks good because you get some money, but it really is restrictive in how you spend it. It's like having a coupon for a store that doesn't sell you what you want, Hood said. Quote, in my mind, it's more than local government. I think that in a city like Detroit, with regards to housing and economic development, there are a lot of institutional and organizational actors that could play a role in applying redress. Again, how is handing out money or taking down a statue or a flag, renaming an army base, how exactly is that going to change history or right the wrongs of history? The responsibility shouldn't just be the government, she concluded. And they talk about San Francisco's payout proposal, which sparked the local NAACP to urge the board to reject it and focus more on education, housing, jobs, healthcare. Quote, African Americans never had a chance to grow a business, own some property, get equity, and move on to bigger things. Well, actually, this isn't true. I've got a funny story about what happened in the antebellum South. Now, as you know, at that time, women could not vote or own property. And if they did own property, it usually was in a will. Maybe if their husband died, they inherited or received the property, or if there was a family member who died, they, as I said, in a will would have inherited that property. But there was a way to get around that. And there was, believe it or not, a black slave owner, wealthy landowner, African-American woman, who knew somebody in town who was white. And the way you got around this was that that person that you knew, who had money, who was white, could buy the property, put the deed in his name, but you would own the property. You see, there's always a way to get around something. True story, true story. Getting back to the quote here, to me, you've got to look at what's happening around the country. I'm not trying to do San Francisco because I don't know if we can do San Francisco. Of course, Detroit isn't the size of San Francisco. Said Williams, who also chairs the Michigan Democratic Black Caucus. Well, the first thing we need to do, to me, is get an economist to really see how much wealth was lost through those racist practices. So how exactly are you going to do that? As I said, you're going to have to bring somebody in to look at all these social and economic factors. How far back are you willing to go? Williams has repeatedly raised the pains of the economic losses to the black community in Detroit, from the raising of the Black Bottom District, the area now known as Lafayette Park, to build a freeway, and he wants an official apology to the black community. He added that the decades-old highway project was built, quote, under the auspices of urban development, leaving the community as a slum. Quote, should someone give an apology for what they did with I-375 and all the other practices with restricted covenants that caused the harm? Now, I'm all for giving people a hand up, investing in these poor communities to make them better, give people a better quality of life. I'm all for that. But there shouldn't be guilt attached to it. He goes on to say, quote, the federal government was based on slavery on a municipality basis. It's dealing with issues of zoning, restricted covenants, FHA loans that we didn't get, etc., etc. Well, Mr. Williams, the United States was not based or founded on this idea of slavery and racism. The reason we left Great Britain is because we were protesting what the king was doing at the time, violating the rights that these colonists had, protected rights under what they refer to as the ancient constitutions, rights guaranteed by Parliament. That's why we seceded from Great Britain. And at the time, yes, we did have slaves. I mean, if you want to make an argument that the American Revolution was about slavery, we can do that, because King George promised to free the slaves in New England if they left the rebel masters. But the United States was not founded, it was really not founded, and I've said this before many times, wasn't founded as a country, it was founded as a confederation of states. And each state was supposed to be sovereign and independent, able to handle their own affairs, whether it be how they ran their local government, whether it be an issue such as slavery, trade. But no, the United States was not founded strictly on this idea of racism and slavery. Now, the 13-member body has a $350,000 budget for the next 18 months. How are they going to survive on this? Some of which may be spent on consultants whose expertise is in housing and economic development. Well, how much are you going to have to pay for those consultants? Quote, we should get an expert on the housing market. It can't be off-the-cuff stuff. On top of it, where's this affordable housing going to be built? From a historical perspective, the land was taken on the east side, the I-94, 375, and that area. Where's there land that can be conducive to new affordable housing, Williams said. Let us go through a process of putting all these facts together and doing the research. Then we make our recommendation. Then hopefully they'll take our recommendation. So I thought I'd share this with you. Story at Yahoo News. They're facing a major roadblock in Detroit. Demanding reparations isn't all it's cracked up to be. And when you have low turnout from the black community for these meetings, you're going to have to go back to the drawing board here. I think a lot of African Americans in this country don't want to be treated like pawns or tokens. I don't want to be treated like a pawn or token or poking. Don't you be treating me like a poking. I just made that word up. Well, maybe that should be a new term, poking. If you're trying to use people as a way to get money for reparations, you have to pay for what happened 300 years ago, 400 years ago. Even though you had nothing to do with it, you still have to pay for it. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, you know what to do. You can also follow me at Instagram, #JasonComposes, because I write music in my spare time. Or you can find me at Twitter, Cultural Confederacy, at CulturalConfed1 on Twitter. This is the Cultural Confederacy saying peace out, stay safe, everybody. God bless this thing called the United States. And you know how we do it here. This is where the past crashes with the present. I'll catch you next time.